Merry Christmas, everyone. It's almost the most wonderful time of year once again. Now I know some of you Scrooges might be upset about the cold, and yeah, the air hurting your face isn't comfortable, but let's try to enjoy the festivities so there's at least some happiness in the world. There are a lot of things to love about this season. Presents, the aesthetic of winter, spending time with loved ones, and of course the stories told. There's so much Christmas folklore to talk about, but today we're exploring the history of probably the most famous Christmas figure, aside from the birthday boy himself. Today we're going to see how an ancient Christian saint was transformed into the Santa we know today. Saint Nicholas is world famous. Ask any person on the street and they'll at least know the name. If you ask the people to tell you about Saint Nicholas though, they'll probably just name aspects of Santa, not the actual historic figure. Saint Nicholas has a lot of stories about him, but not all of them are written history. Sources about his early life are almost non-existent, and what he did during his time as a bishop is unclear in terms of written sources. There's a lot of legend and tradition around him, though it's important to remember that legend doesn't necessarily mean made up. It's entirely possible that these things were things he did in real life, but they weren't written down until after. You don't write down everything you do, after all. Not to mention other parts of his life could be from oral tradition, which is a valid form of history, don't even get me started. For simplicity's sake, I'll tell you what the Catholic Church says about St. Nicholas's life, and you can decide what to believe. We don't know when St. Nicholas was born, but we do know he was born into a wealthy family. His parents died during a plague when he was still very young, so Nicholas was taken in by his uncle, who was a bishop. The uncle wanted Nicholas to become a priest, so he raised him with that mindset, and Nicholas accepted God's calling to priesthood, and eventually got ordained as a bishop. Nicholas was an incredibly devout Christian and gave away the wealth he inherited from his parents to locals in his community. On one such occasion, a father was worried he could not afford a dowry, which meant his daughters could not get married. Nicholas learned of this, and he snuck into the man's home at night, through the chimney, and left gold in the girl's stockings. He did this twice in secret, but on the third time he was caught. The man was so overwhelmed by Nicholas's generosity and praised him. Nicholas simply said, "It is God who deserves the praise, not I." Nicholas also asked the man to keep this a secret, but because I'm telling you about it now, he clearly did not keep it a secret. Jumping ahead just a little, after Nicholas's death, a child was captured by pirates off the coast of Crete and brought to the Middle East. The child prayed for Nicholas to return him home, and on what would become the feast day of Saint Nicholas, the child was returned home by the ghost of Nicholas himself. These two stories are what earned Nicholas the title of Patron Saint of Children. Aside from saving children, Nicholas was also an avid defender of the Christian faith during his lifetime. According to Catholic legend, Nicholas was the one who destroyed the Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In history, the Temple of Artemis was destroyed by Christians after Rome converted to Christianity, but it's unknown who did it and when. And I just gotta say real quick, I find it very odd we don't know who destroyed this temple, because it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. You know the only wonder still left standing? The Great Pyramids of Giza. Granted, the Temple of Artemis wasn't nearly as large as the pyramids, but the fact it was in the same weight class says how much of a big deal it was. And we don't know who destroyed this monumental structure? I don't get it, man. Another slightly less destructive time Nicholas defended the faith was against heresy at the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea deserves a video all on its own, so I won't go into it here. The short of it is, though, it was a council to decide how the church would interpret Jesus' nature. Did he have 2 natures, one human and one divine, or did he have one nature that was simultaneously human and divine? This doesn't sound like a big difference, but the answer has implications that can still be felt in the church to this very day. That's as far as I'm going into that subject because I am not qualified to talk about Trinitarianism at all. Plus, it's been debated for like 2,000 years now, and I doubt I'm going to be the one who ends that debate. Nicholas was at the Council of Nicaea according to some historic sources. At the Council of Nicaea there was one priest, Arius, who was preaching a heretical interpretation of the Holy Trinity. Nicholas was so appalled by this heresy that in the middle of Arius' speech, Nicholas got up from his seat, marched right over to Arius, and punched him square in the face in front of everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean almost every bishop in Rome, along with the Roman emperor at the time. Nicholas was thrown in jail and stripped of his rank in the church for punching a priest. But later that night, Nicholas saw Jesus and Mary in a dream, and they commended Nicholas for defending the faith so well. Another person also saw a dream in that night. It was the Roman emperor who saw Nicholas punch Arius, Constantine. Jesus and Mary came to Constantine, and they demanded that Nicholas be restored of his rank. So when Constantine woke up that morning, he ordered Nicholas be released from jail and given his rank back. There are other stories of St. Nicholas, but these are the ones I thought were the most important/interesting. Nicholas would later die of old age, and he was buried in Myra. When the Turks came and conquered the region, some Italians snuck away his bones to Italy. That was the story of the real St. Nicholas's life. But you're probably wondering, how does that man end up becoming Santa Claus? Sure, they both like giving gifts to children, but Santa doesn't burn pagan temples or punch heretics, as far as we know. Well, to find that answer, we need to visit the Dutch. Nicholas was declared a saint long before a formal sanctification process was established, so he was able to spread wicked far very early on. Christians all over Europe were praying to St. Nicholas, and he was especially popular in the Netherlands, where he was called Sinter Klaas, or Sinter Klaas for short. Sinter Klaas was celebrated in late November and early December by men dressing up in red bishop robes and going around their communities with helpers, Zwarte Piet. The Protestant Reformation did bring an end to these celebrations somewhat, because, Protestants don't like saints and all, but the tradition never truly died, and it's still celebrated in the Netherlands to this day. Fast forward again and jump across the pond to New York City. After the American Revolution, there was a lot of anti-British sentiments in the country, and New York decided to celebrate their Dutch heritage by reminding people about New Amsterdam and some of the Dutch traditions that were still done in the city. It was around this time, in the 1770s, when Santa Claus first appeared in writing, and it appeared because Americans butchered Sinterklaas's name. From there, a man named Washington Irving would seize the Santa Claus character, and he would remake him in his satirical book on New York history. Instead of being a bishop who gave gifts to children, he wrote Santa Claus as a large elf who gave gifts to children. And at that moment, Santa as we knew him came into being. But he still needed to get big. Big as in popular, not fat. He was plenty big in that aspect already. And we have a man named Clement Moore to thank for that. Moore read Irving's book and decided to take that Santa character and write a poem about him. The poem is called A Visit from St. Nick, although you probably know it better as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. This poem caught America by storm, and it solidified not just our modern Christmas celebrations, but Santa Claus himself into the modern era. Okay, so some of you are probably wondering, wait, what about Odin? How does he factor into the history of Santa? Well, I hate to be the one to break it to you guys, but Santa and Odin aren't really that connected. I can see why you might think they are, though. At first glance, they are pretty similar, but if you dig into the history of either character, you realize they aren't much alike at all. Sure, they're both old men who fly through the sky, but that's about it. Santa flies through the sky delivering presents to good children. Odin flies through the sky collecting souls for his army to fight at Ragnarok. And on the rare instances he does give presents, it's as a reward for outsmarting him with clever trickery. He's not doing it out of the goodness of his heart. I've also seen some blogs online make some pretty big leaps, like Odin's horse having 8 legs and Santa having 8 reindeer means there has to be a connection. And honestly, that's circumstantial at best. It's not like Odin's horse's legs have names, plus his horse is white, not brown like a deer. I've also seen some articles say that Odin has a group of elves who make things for him, and that just has no mythical basis at all. I don't know where they got that from. Now, the word Yule is used in Scandinavia as the word for Christmas, but that's a translation. And yes, some Christmas traditions do come from Yule, but not all of them. And while Odin was on some occasions called the Yule god, Odin especially didn't come during Yule to give presents to children. All in all, when you dig into the proper sources and the actual history, you realize there isn't much of a connection between these two, no matter how many blogs online will tell you they are connected. But hey, I'm sure that when Santa and Odin pass each other in the night sky, they still wave at each other to spread holiday cheer. Now, before I go, I want to remind everyone that this video is made in collaboration with Cask Theology. He has a video about Simon Stylite, a saint who was practicing social distancing way back in the early 400s. The video is over on his channel, which you should definitely go watch and subscribe to. You know, funny thing, our last collab was in December at Christmas time too. Maybe this is becoming an unintentional tradition. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. For the meantime though, Merry Christmas to everyone. I wish you all a happy and healthy New Year.